And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to GeekWatch, a subsidiary of the monastery, the open bar of the internet. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have 1, 2, 3, 4 good brothers. Ha 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 ha. We have the recovering Dallas Cowboys apologist and the man who is currently recovering from his redacted addiction. Good brother Cure. We have the flamboyant flyer and the second biggest yes man in all of geekdom. The first one, of course, being the literal yes man from New Vegas. Good brother Flutter. We have the man taking over all of your anime under a pair of star-shaped glasses. Good brother Shades. And we have the man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zadari Enterprises, and the bane of my fucking existence. Good brother Xanatrix.
Thank you. No applause needed. He'll be baned for the rest of eternity.
And oh boy, this is one that I knew that inevitably I was going to have to tackle this in one form or another, especially after that Valley of the Judge that Zan and I did with Magpie's abomination of an attempt at an Avatar RPG that they are working on. If you need the details on why we do not approve of that and why it's getting blackballed, go watch the Valley of the Judge we did, and you'll get to see Xanatrix lose his shit.
Yes.
Oh, God, I almost want to watch just for that alone.
Same here.
But I knew that with all of the roasting that I've done on the follow-up to one of my favorite animated shows of the 2000s, I was going to have to tackle The Legend of Korra. And I want to make clear on something. In the past reconstructions, we have recontextualized elements. You know, put a new spin on things, not necessarily blow things up as much as we've joked about. But given this, and given what came out of it, I know that I'm going to have to drop so many bombs that I need to call in a bit of a line. Because we have arrived, and it is now that we perform our charge. In fealty to the God Emperor, our undying Lord, and by the grace of the Golden Throne, I declare exterminatus upon the imperial world of Republic City. I hereby sign the death warrant of a world and consign 1,000,000 souls to oblivion. May imperial justice account in all balance. The Emperor protects.
The Emperor protects!
Or to put it simply, here come the nukes.
Yep.
Sam, surprised.
Look,
So many bombs, you'd think that this is Iraq in 2003.
Uh-huh.
look, we haven't really. I'd say the closest thing that we've done up until this point of a full-on nuke was what we did with Finn.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And even then, that was a nuke out of necessity. Now, in this particular case, I'm not going to say that everything is getting nuked, but I can say that where we end up and where we start are not going to be the same. But we need to set the stage. So, I've already talked about how I have a particular love for Avatar: The Last Airbender. I've made that very clear. I've referenced it plenty of times in my work. It was what helped me expand a lot of horizons. I still have the fucking art book for the thing, which is where I discovered a few interesting stories, namely that Julie was them taking the piss out of the Nickelodeon representative.
Judy.
Yes. And that whole thing with Aang and the ridiculous armor during that episode.
The
That
Ember Island stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was them that was them poking fun at the toy department of Nickelodeon because they would make these ridiculous suggestions and they kept rejecting them.
I love take bats like those.
Yeah. And the Cabbage Merchant was their own little homage to the three old guys from Cowboy Bebop.
Ooh.
That's one of my favorite
My
little
cabbages!
No, cabbages!
And the thing with all of it is reading through that book, which even if you're not an art book collector like myself, I do recommend reading that particular art book because it's a very interesting it's a very interesting take on a lot of the development of things. And I might be a little bit biased because I always like to see how things are created in that respect. But it was
You have a love for behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
Basically.
I mean, for fuck's sake, I was willing to watch a documentary on Apocalypse Now's creation. And I've seen way too many takes on the Abyss, or as it was known behind the scenes, the Abuse. But when the Legend of Korra was announced as a follow-up, I was optimistic, but I was cautious. Largely because of the fact that we're dealing with a whole new character. Like after that little cliffhanger tease at the end of Fire.
Where's my mother? Yes, and you'll never find out unless you read the comics.
We'll get to that.
Ah!
But then we ended up getting the show, and I had problems with Air. I most certainly had problems. It wasn't good, but at the very least, it seemed to tie itself neatly in a bow, and it wasn't until years later that I found out they initially didn't plan for multiple seasons. They figured they'd just get one 12-episode season, and that was the end of it.
And if I had to say anything about the Book of Air in Legend of Korra, it's that there are a bunch of missed opportunities.
A bunch of missed opportunities, but I didn't hate it. Like, it didn't piss me off. Then Spirit happened. Then I got pissed off. I think I made this clear when we did the cardinal sins of writing, but few things make my blood boil as much as breaking established rules. I didn't give Men of Steel a pass for this. I don't give Avatar a pass for this. And even as much as I love DS9, I didn't give it a pass for the fact that it introduced the whole Pa Wraith thing, which I even back then thought was a dumb idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then change happened, and I still have not gotten a concrete reason as to why they moved to online. I've seen some argue ratings, some argue that what they wanted to do they couldn't do without pissing off the FCC. I think they just wanted a marquee thing to build up clicks for their online service, which of course when the hell has that ever worked? And plus, you want to do that with a series that's already midway through production.
That's a bad idea.
Yeah, why don't you
very
ask
bad
Kamen Rider
idea.
Dragon Knight how that turned out for them?
Yeah. Which, for the record, we will not do a reconstruction of Kamen Rider Dragon Knight because I don't think it's necessary.
We may be somewhat masochistic, but we're not that masochistic.
No, it's not even that. Dragon Knight wasn't all that bad. Yes, it had its problems, but it was better than Ryuki by a mile.
Not like that. That is not even
Oh.
a statement worth.
Sorry about this, guys, but I'm being called elsewhere.
All right.
All right.
Later, man.
Later.
See you later.
Stay frosty.
But then change happened, and would you all like to guess how many Bane memes came out of that?
I already know how many Bane memes came out of that.
And then
there.
the final season came about. And suddenly I'm a massive bigot because I didn't let all the suffering I had gone through up until that point to just pass me by just because you sneak in one gay kiss at the end of it. It's like, congratulations, you have a canon lesbian couple. Should have done. Not getting you a pass because you did it in the final seconds of the final episode of the final scene of the final season.
No, this isn't tokenism at all. Not at all. It's not. It's completely established, foreshadowed throughout the entire series. Obviously.
Oh, people were
tokenism. No.
Somebody tried to rationalize it that the bi-curious gag in one episode previously was them foreshadowing. There is reaching, and then there is having Plastic Man and Reed Richards drawn and quartered across the earth.
Yeah.
There's
Twice.
Do you want to know what I call that type of foreshadowing and or lamp shading at this point?
What?
The Emperor has no clothes. There's nothing there.
Pretty much.
So basically, you're shoehorned for the sake of being shoehorned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because at the end of Air, they were already establishing a relationship between Korra and Mako.
Which went nowhere because they were playing relationship hot potato because my love triangle.
Ugh.
Idiots.
You know, it's
Yeah, because those are always enjoyable.
There are certain YouTubers that I follow who cover young adult novels, and as well as just fantasy novels as a whole, and they absolutely hate that particular trope. And it's the reason why they hate Twilight more than me, and considering how much I hate Twilight, that's saying something.
Yeah.
It's also the reason why the romance in Atla actually worked, because there was no implied romance anywhere else. It was just Aang and Katara. It was just these were relationship lines, people, not polygons. We're good.
And let's with that in mind, years later I would find out that was not an isolated case, that there were plenty of other shows that were trying to do that whole we'll sneak in a little bit of tokenism for the LGBT crowd at the last second.
Or, the other ones where they sneak in tokenism only to kill the token character next episode.
Mm-hmm.
Those things all happened all throughout the 90s and early 2000s. Those were nice.
Would anybody be mad if I make a little comparison?
Shoot.
Okay, there's one cartoon that I haven't seen, but I know of it. The Owl House. And the relationship between the two characters there. That was gradual. That was done by Disney, people.
Rick in the chat is saying, was there a love triangle with Sokka, because we had him and Suki, but was there anyone else they tried to shoehorn in?
No,
Not really.
His first girlfriend was the princess who turned into the moon. Remember, there's an entire meme about that.
Mm-hmm.
Because why not?
But he moved on from that, and then he moved on to Suki.
Yes, there's been no polygon, just two different lines.
Yeah.
So it's two separate line segments.
And the only people who would insist tough in this situation are the shippers, and you guys know my policy on headcanons.
They get the headcanon.
They get the headcanon.
Yeah.
Just like the fucking Zu-Katara shippers.
Yeah.
And now these people are trying to, side note, now these people are trying to justify that this could happen in in the new series being made because now Kara is older than Sokka and not the other way around? I'm like, but how does that justify this thing?
If that series even comes to pass, because we've heard not only have we heard absolutely nothing about it, then we end up getting the announcement of Avatar Studios being developed, which is the ultimate "fuck you, I'll do it myself."
Yeah, Zuko's whole thing with Mai, which did resolve at the end of Atla. Zuko and Mai are a couple at this point.
Yeah.
There were no polygons in these relationships, people. Simple geometry dictates that the line segments are best for this. Relationship geometry.
Have I made it clear over the years that I have absolutely zero respect for shippers? Or rather, a certain type of shippers. I do want to make that clear.
Never, Monk. Never.
No, not at all.
Lazy guy like to sum it all up in one simple phrase. It should be community. We do whatever the hell we want, and everybody can yell at us, but we don't care.
I mean, and I'm pretty sure it's inevitable that somebody's going to call me a hypocrite because of how much I enjoy the work that D-Bride does, but that's just fan work, and I have a hard time staying mad when those little comics end up working out so well.
Look, if I want to see a polygon relationship, I go watch people play RPGs. I'm not wrong.
You're not
That's why
wrong.
we laugh.
That was a good one there, Kieran. Very nice.
Kira, you spelled visual novel wrong.
That's true.
Just saying, you gotta aim higher, man. But with all the now, of course, I had gotten my fair share of shade thrown at me because I had the audacity to proclaim Korra as a Mary Sue. And in fact, there were plenty of times where I'd said this show really needs a "reason you suck" speech aimed at her, especially since you can pretty much a lot of it. You can pretty much go with a cycle, and this is the reason why Spirit broke my infinite patience. Korra had this little cycle. Act like a bitch. Get the slightest bit of pushback. Act all depressed. And then her friends go, no, you're perfect. Rinse, repeat. If that, and as far as I'm concerned, that's the ultimate qualifier for Mary fucking Sue.
That's definitely one of them. My other is the fact that she knew 3 elements at the age of 5.
We'll get to that. But with all of that said, I do think it's very telling that the best thing to come out of The Legend of Korra was a mediocre Platinum Games entry.
It was only mediocre because of the fact that Platinum Games got rushed on it.
Pretty much.
Because anybody who's played a Platinum Games game knows that even if the game is not something that is to your personal taste, it is a masterpiece of art and mechanics.
Like I said, when the worst that you can do is just okay, I think that alone speaks volumes.
Yeah, pretty much.
I just still like to point it out because people are like, "See, Platinum's not that good after all." I'm like, this isn't Platinum's fault. Fuck you.
Yeah, if anything, I would blame Activision.
Activision and Nickelodeon both.
Yeah. As well, it's not like Nickelodeon has a long history of bad decisions or anything.
The fact that they keep running the same fucking show all day, every day, and to the detriment of any other show they have.
Mm-hmm.
They canceled all of their really, really cool live game shows like Legend of the Hidden Temple.
Amen, brother!
Yep.
The Shrine of the Silver Monkey.
But with all that said, given a setting as rife with opportunity as this one is, this will go down as a missed opportunity, and I think it's very telling that the majority of the people, whenever you bring up Avatar these days, they're thinking of Atla and not thinking of Korra. That, to me, is very telling. So with all that said, let us have a go.
Thank you, Mr. Blumpier.
So, and no, I'm not wasting Jaeger on this. I'm saving all my drinking for what I've got to deal with later this week.
Oh.
Yeah, you know, Shades.
Huh?
So we need to set a few ground rules before we really delve into it. Now, first things first. I don't think I'm going to be going out of line with this, but I am of the opinion that before we even start with Korra, I am arguing that the Promise and the Search in this hypothetical be made into TV movies.
Okay.
You know, just simply because of the fact that going from the world of Atla to the world that we're building, we need to have that kind of transition eased in. Instead of just a one-sentence description about how the Republic was founded.
Yeah, we need to establish how that came to be, and more importantly, we need to kind of tie the two series together.
Mm-hmm.
Have those two movies, and then at the end of the second one, end with a future event where Aang passes on, and sometime later, we see the birth of Korra.
Mm-hmm. Now, I do for the now you've now when it comes to the Search, there's not a whole lot to say on that one. That's mainly just wrapping up the whole thing about Zuko's mother. But the Promise is if we have to drop one of them in this, the Search is the one I'd potentially drop. The Promise is the one that I'm not bending on. Ironically speaking.
I was gonna say pun not intended, I assume.
Because I feel that one is the more important. And Shades, you recall Chuck's summation of the Promise?
Not offhand. I don't think I've seen that video yet.
The Promise takes place immediately after Sozin's comet, and you of course have a celebration because the long Earth Fire War is finally over, and Zuko is the new Fire Lord. But in all the celebration, Zuko, because he just can't help but piss on everybody's parade, asks Aang to make a promise that if he ever ends up becoming like Ozai, to kill him. Which I understand why Zuko would make that kind of request, but timing, because he's asking this as the celebration is going on and there's fireworks all over the fucking place. Just a little tact is all I'm saying, man.
It's Zuko. He doesn't know the meaning of the word.
Fair point.
That's rough, buddy.
But immediately afterwards, a plan is announced called the Harmony Restoration Plan. The idea of taking the Fire Nation colonies and handing control of them back to the Earth Kingdom, which is received so well for Zuko that he has to deal with not one, not two, but 7 assassination attempts in the span of less than a year.
Jesus!
One from a woman who uses earthbending, but believes herself as a member of the Fire Nation and refers to Zuko as a traitor. He then goes to one of the colonies, and the chief of the place asks why is he abandoning them. Because the thing is, the people on those colonies have been Fire Nation citizens for generations, and because of that, this whole idea of, oh, you guys are now Earth, you guys are now part of the Earth Kingdom now. They've looked at that as a betrayal, even though some of them don't even firebend, plenty of them earthbend. So that kind of puts a wrinkle in the situation, and he goes back and is like, nope, we're abandoning the Harmony Restoration Plan. But unfortunately, it had gotten far enough that now the Earth Kingdom is kind of pissed at the whole backing out part, so it's made things even worse. So that is what leads Zuko to that scene that we saw at the end of Fire, where he goes to Iroh's prison and asks where is his mother, and Iroh laughs at him. Not Iroh, Ozai laughs at him. Ozai just laughs at him and mocks his status as a leader. And he brings up a story about a beach incident that happened regarding whether an eagle had won its meal or not. And the point, I'm not going to go into details of the thing, but the point is that Zuko is still thinking with the mindset of a prince or a subordinate. He still is under the attitude that he is answerable to someone. Yet he is Fire Lord now. He is not answerable to anyone. And also, and of course, during the whole thing, the Avatar Aang is discussing with his past selves about what to do, and they pretty much have the attitude of, yeah, probably best to actually follow through on that promise. But ultimately, when everything's about to come to a head and it looks like another war between Earth and Fire is going to start, Aang decides to do something different, and he walls off the entire colonies. His mindset is that if they go to one or the other, that's going to create an imbalance. The only solution is to create something new. That something new is the Unified Republic. So, in other words, the Fire Nation, the colonies don't become part of any nation. They are a complete independent with collaboration with all four. Which I'd say, and this is the big reason why I think the promise needs to show up, is because Republic City is shown as this very cosmopolitan place with a lot of elements of all nations, as well as a bit of early immigration era New York in its particular vibe. And I think by having the promise actually shown, it's not going to be as jarring of a turn. Now, speaking of that, when it comes to there's two questions that we have to delve into before we get into how we're going to handle Korra as a character. The first is, do we have it that she is found by the White Lotus?
Mm.
The White Lotus at this point would have much more support from the leaders of the world, especially since, Zuko and everybody else helped the Avatar and were helped by the White Lotus. Having the White Lotus find Korra does make a certain amount of sense, considering that they're everywhere across the world. But I don't think that the White Lotus finds her by themselves. I think ultimately the news gets to her, the White Lotus then confers and approaches her family and goes, hey, this is the new Avatar. We want to keep her safe, get her trained. And aren't nearly as overbearing as the story tried to make them out to be, which was always a weird facet for me.
Yeah. One thing that I can say that we're probably going to have to nuke from the get-go is the whole idea of her being able to bend 3 elements when she's just a toddler.
Yeah. I think we can establish at some point that
She bends water easy since she's born water tribe.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And we could say that, she doesn't have a good control over it, but maybe she just accidentally starts using some of the other bendings. But not like becomes decent at them or uses a whole bunch of different things. Just one little thing here where all of a sudden she just accidentally fire bends.
I was thinking either that or given what you mentioned about control, she ends up bending more water than she wanted to. Trying to bend a little bit of a pool and then blowing a massive fountain of water in the middle of the street or something.
I think that one makes more sense for discovering that she's the Avatar, actually, because she's already Water Tribe. She's going to be watching, waterbenders bend water. She's going to be trying to do it herself as an inquisitive little kid, and maybe she'll make small waves here and there, and she'll get a little discouraged, or she'll get, she's like, why can't I do it like they can? Because little kids ask that all the time. Why can't I do it like mommy or daddy does it? And from there, she tries, and she gets frustrated and fed up, and then all of a sudden, big old tidal wave of water because holy crap, you're the Avatar.
Yeah. Because even when Aang only had one element, he was still even at the start he was still very, very good at that one element.
Yeah, and while he was, raised among the air nomads who are very, very reminiscent of a monastic order, and thus would have been slightly ascetic and focused on airbending, his airbending seemed to be a lot more advanced for a 12-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a clue that the elements are probably easier for the Avatar to grasp, especially their element they're born to.
One thing that I know that I'm going to be hitting the nuke on is something that was effectively brought up in Spirits, and that is that her father is the chief of the Southern Water Tribe. I do not like that at all.
I also don't think it would necessarily have to be the chief's daughter of the Water Tribe that becomes the next Avatar. That does strike that particular detail is unnecessary, because once it's discovered that she's the Avatar and she goes through training with the White Lotus and possibly with some of the best experts worldwide, the chief of the Water Tribes, both North and South, are going to want to establish diplomatic relations with the Avatar to continue to hold the peace. It doesn't matter if the chief of the Southern Water Tribe is her dad, because she's still going to have direct access to him as just the Avatar.
Yeah, the reason why it rubbed me the wrong way when that was revealed in the canon end of things is because you're going with overpowered and everybody likes her, and also she's a princess, and you want me to not make Mary Sue jokes?
Oh no, that's absolutely yet another Mary Sue facet. That's just another checkbox on a list of checkboxes we've checked so far. And wait, she passed the threshold for Mary Sue about 70 checkboxes ago.
There's also the fact that when you look at a lot of aspects of the hero's journey of a lot of heroic characters that we see in fantasy fiction, more often than not, they are people who come from humble beginnings.
I would argue more often than not, the ones we resonate with come from humble beginnings.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are badly written ones that come from humble beginnings, and really good written ones that are not Mary Sue's that come from royal beginnings.
Yeah.
But they're both sides of that are the exception and not the rule. You're correct.
And a lot of that does come from Joseph Campbell's writing. and
Mhm.
and the kind of audience that a lot of fantasy stories were for to begin with. That being it's not that's not to say that you can't have a heroic relatable character who happens to be royalty, but you have to take a certain approach with that kind of thing. And with this kind of story, um the royalty thing is unnecessary, so and may lead to and can certainly lead to conflict of interest consequences. So that would have to get excised. Um,
I mean, if we did choose to keep them in for whatever reason, exploring those conflict of interest issues could be a fun plot hook, but that's not what we're going for.
yeah. Now this now obviously so we have a bit of a setup as far as the creation of Republic City and all that, and through this the whole notion of Korra just being a average girl who ends up being who ends up being revealed as the Avatar during the water incident that we've described, which obviously somebody creating a spout of water like that out of the blue, that is going to get the White Lotus's attention. And
Especially since they're aware of the Avatar cycle and know that the next tribe that the Avatar should be born to is water.
Something that I would probably hint in at the end of the search is that what is that when Aang shortly after Aang passed away, an order was given out to begin keeping an eye out on settlements all over the world, because one of them especially settlements in the water tribes, because that's going to be the next one in the cycle. The next Avatar is going to come from one of those places.
Now, I want to bring up the discussion we were having prior to starting regarding the remainder of the Avatar's allies.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, my position was that when we get to the main story, they should be flashbacks at most. Some involvement, but very, very little involvement.
Mm-hmm.
As part of establishing Korra as the Avatar and the White Lotus taking her in, I think the White Lotus would not only bring her to bending experts to learn the other elements and to learn water, but because of the connection that all of the Avatar's ensemble had with the world. You know, we've got Toph, the first metal bender, and a very influential figure in the Earth Kingdom. We've got Zuko, who is the Fire Lord. We've got Katara, who, while not being nearly as influential as a chief of the Southern or Northern Water tribes, is just going to be influential from having been with the Avatar, along with her brother Sokka being a tactical genius. Let's be honest there.
Yes.
Sokka was a genius. He was the normie that did genius things.
Also, is it wrong of me that a small part of me marked out seeing when it came to the whole crafting his own gear and the black sword?
I love that. That was great. But I think that the White Lotus would also take her to these people.
Mm-hmm.
Would take her to Toph and Sokka and Katara and Zuko to talk with them, to understand how Aang as an Avatar worked, and how, yes, she can get the direct experiences of Aang himself from the Avatar cycle, but having those outside viewpoints are important. Not to mention, she could even learn some really cool bending tricks from all of them. Maybe Toph can teach an Avatar to metal bend, at least a tiny bit. Not a huge bit, like she can, but a tiny bit.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe Sokka can give a good lesson to the Avatar. You know, sometimes bending failed Aang, and sometimes you just gotta use your head. So I'm gonna teach you to use your head.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the bending instruction, you have the connection to the previous Avatar ensemble, all to help build Korra as a more balanced person.
Which that brings me to something else when it comes to her persona. Now, obviously, Mary Sue's are not really meant to have a whole lot in the way of personality or in terms of personality quirks, or rather, they just have one quirk that isn't a quirk. So
Mary Sue's are usually a loosely collected jumble of tropes.
mm-hmm. The when I was thinking about how to better define someone like this, given her personality and given her appearance and the fact that the phrase "swimmer's build" was thrown about a fair few amount of times.
Her build is not a swimmer's build.
No.
Her build is outright a martial artist's build.
I mean, I was a swimmer for a while, and even I didn't go that far.
Yeah, that type of muscle definition is only what you get from kicking other people's asses and getting your ass kicked. I know from experience.
Yeah, I would say there were a couple of things that came to mind. One of them is the sense that she's a very look before she leaps kind of person. Not Aang. Now, yeah, Aang could certainly be that, but Aang's big flaw was the fact that he still wanted to be a kid and couldn't see the bigger picture. I think Korra's in a similar regard would be not being able to hold themselves back. Whenever they do something, they go all in on it. The problem is sometimes that going all in includes both personality and bending. So these just something to make it a little bit more reasonable why she might not be good at air bending. Whereas the other
that would
one,
make sense. And actually, I think the way to approach Korra as a character should kind of parallel another series when it involves different iterations of the same character. And I'm pretty sure most of you know where I'm going with this.
I've got different iterations of the same character. I can think of two, and I'm probably dead wrong on both.
Where do you think I'm going with this? I want to hear.
Well, you're probably not going with Bond.
Nope. Definitely not Bond.
The Doctor.
Ding, 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 ding.
Okay. So I was closer on the mark, and although it could be there are certain traits that, if I recall correctly, there are certain traits that are more emphasized with different incarnations of the Doctor. All of them have the same traits. It's just more of order of priority.
Exactly, but the point I'm getting at with this is that when it comes to new incarnations of the Avatar, I think a small aspect of it should be a reaction to the previous form. And that's where you guys were kind of already going that with the whole she's more gung-ho compared to Aang. I think that's really be a little more emphasized, that she is unintentionally a reaction to Aang.
I think we were actually arguing the opposite, that Aang was a little more impulsive and that this new rebuild of Korra was more methodical.
Fair. But yeah, that's what it should be. She should be more wanting to be mature, but not, fully understanding what that means, but always striving to be.
Yeah. Especially since, and that works even more so given how Zan had talked about her getting these particular bits of knowledge and experiences from the other members of Team Avatar at a young age. So there's kind of this hero image of what they did that could already be built up from when she was a little girl.
It was something that they kind of try to establish, and I emphasize try in the actual Korra, but I think that's something they should really push for. Is that she understands the role she has, but instead of just coasting on it like they did in the Euro show, at least the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
that she has an understanding of what the Avatar is and what responsibility she has, but she doesn't truly grasp it.
The closest that it seemed that she grasped it in canon is the Avatar is the strongest bender.
Which was the exact wrong conclusion.
Yeah, especially since when it came to just looking at bending as something cool, Aang got completely roasted over an open fire by Zhang Zhang about that twice.
Yep.
Mostly because he was fucking right.
Yep. No, the lessons that they would impart to her, I think, would be things about how the Avatar tries to keep all the bending nations balanced and at peace, along with all the other particular minutiae that comes with it. And the reason why the Avatar has so much more power is to enforce that.
Yes.
But that does not make the Avatar the strongest bender automatically. The Avatar has to work just like everybody else does at bending. I mean, a session sitting with Toph alone is going to teach Korra how much trouble Aang had learning earth bending. That may actually help with when she goes to learn firebending, because as a waterbender, firebending is going to be the most difficult for her. The opposite element, because it's the opposite of what you learn with that particular element. Not only just in movement, but in mindset.
I ended up getting a brilliant but terrible visualization when it comes to this training.
Oh God.
That being, and this could probably be used as a gag of okay, for the weebs among you, who here is familiar with the phrase Nekojita?
Oh.
Why do you say these things?
I'm one.
Shades, would you mind giving the rundown on what Nekojita means?
I'll do my best. Basically, a Nekojita is somebody who doesn't handle heat very well. Most especially when it comes to hot foods. Not spicy, just plain hot.
Yeah.
They can't have anything cooked.
The approach that I'm going with, and this could easily be used as a running gag, is that Korra is especially growing up in the South Pole, is a bit heat sensitive. Like when in the same way that I might complain a little bit if I have to deal with Florida summer heat. It's in that kind of regard, because that's out of her environment. And of course, Shocker goes, "Hi, Fies, how you doing?" Yeah, that's kind of the approach I'm going with. So
yeah,
I think the gag would work most in the Fire Nation when she's trying to learn firebending, and Zuko invites her for a cup of tea.
Yeah,
that would make that's perfect.
She would ice it a little bit. He's like, "Why are you ruining the tea?" She's like, "It's too hot."
Cold
Burns
tea
her tongue
is just
first,
leaf juice. You could totally see someone writing that as you could totally see Zuko saying that as a callback.
You could say Zuko saying that as a callback, because, well, he's probably learned a lot from Iroh at that point.
Yeah.
But Uncle Iroh.
The thing to focus when it comes to this, because the visualization I had was that whoever was helping her train was trying to help her understand heat by having her in some equivalent of a sauna, and it only lasts like 30 seconds before she just runs out.
No, better. 30 seconds. She starts turning as pink as pink as can be, and then she faints.
Yeah,
like people who stay in the sauna too long.
And you could easily have a gag of somebody holding a hourglass and going, "Geez, that was fast." Click. Just I always like putting little things in serious moments to add some levity to it. I've
When done right, it makes it so much fun.
Yeah, I've made it clear that one of my favorite jokes during Fire was Zuko's first attempt to try and teach Aang Fire, and it just goes with just a little puff, and I end up bust out laughing at Aang's clapping. Doesn't help that before that in that same season we had the infamous Wang Fire, which okay, that's the name you want to go with. Okay, I'm not gonna stop you. But the thing, the the thing is with all of these is that because some that does bring me to one particular question of why she would want to go to Republic City.
Well, the Republic City is the only power not controlled by any of the other nations. It's the United Republic. It's a place where none of the previous Team Avatar members have settled. It's some place that she likely wouldn't even go when the White Lotus is taking her from teacher to teacher and from Team Avatar member to Team Avatar member. The entire reason she would need to go to Republic City is to see what the place is like in order to understand how it fits into the balance.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of just going there because, it's going to be an exciting and new place, I should go there, and also because Tenzin's there, it's more, I'm supposed to keep the balance. But what does that mean with this new place that isn't part of any of the previous powers the Avatar oversaw? This is something new. I have to go investigate it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Not to mention, with the whole airbending thing, how Tenzin and his family are the only airbenders. That's still probably going to have to be a thing, just because it was pretty well established during Atla that all of the air nomads were killed, besides Aang.
Pretty much, and I'd say another major reason that we'd have to have that in is as a bit of a lost opportunity that can be taken, because we only barely got much of a reason as to why Tenzin is such a stiff neck. But that does bring me to one particular question, because the way that Korra ended up leaving the White Lotus's stronghold, it seemed like she stole herself on a boat along with her dog bear. And would we end up going with that kind of approach, or would it be more of her just borrowing a ship? Because I could see with the amount of training that she's gotten from other people that she at least knows how to operate a sailboat.
I personally think that because we have changed what the White Lotus does with her and everything else, the entire approach of her upbringing to make her a more balanced individual, she would approach the White Lotus and say, so you've had me go from place to place these last, she's what, 17, 18 by the start?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's for the last, they picked her up when she was really young, so like for the last 13, 14 years, you've had me training and learning about my place in the world as the Avatar.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a place that none of us really know much about, and that's Republic City in the United Republic. As the Avatar, don't you think I need to know about that too? And the White Lotus would agree. Like, the White Lotus would be like, yeah, we have people there, but we still don't know a lot about it. And, we'll send you to one of the White Lotus branches in the city, You use it as a base of operations, and you investigate and learn where Republic City fits into the balance. This would be a place where the White Lotus would work with Korra, not against her.
Exactly.
Yeah, and although although there is one. There's one particular wrinkle that could be thrown in when it comes to that, and that is it probably would I could see the White Lotus going. It would cause way too much of a stir if the young Avatar Korra came in. So you can't, if you're going in, you're not going in. You can't go in under that name. I.e., you've got to go in under another name, and you're just a traveling waterbender.
That would make sense, and that would give us impetus for a plot hook later on where she accidentally uses another element just because she's rushing.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's in a situation she's never been in before. She doesn't have a time to be as methodical as she'd like to be. And so, instinctively and slightly impulsively, she snaps out, an earth wall instead of something with water. And people are like, why are you earthbending? Gives us a chance to inspire a different conflict.
And I realize some might roll their eyes about me using the whole false name thing again, but hey, it works. And in this case, it would make logical sense that she would agree to it on the condition that she not use her name.
Well, especially since she most of all would understand that the type of conflict the Avatar can bring just by being there. Mm-hmm. Not only would she get a bunch of admirers to come and see her, which would hamper her from making her investigation, because she'd want to see everything and not just what everybody's showing her. But she'd also get the people who didn't appreciate what Aang and other avatars have done in history coming at her and going, you're terrible, the Avatar is terrible, why are you doing... We don't need you, Avatar. Or even some people who are always going to be in the dark and say the Avatar is unnecessary, we need to kill them. She would actually
like
think...
the Equalists.
Mm-hmm.
Oh...
Yeah, I see what you're doing.
Even back during Korra, equality, equity was still the greatest bane of anybody's existence. But the whole thing is she now that we've made her a more methodical and thinking individual would go, yeah, okay, I can see the logic behind that. I'll be someone else so that we can do this investigation, understand things, and I'll only do Avatar things if it's a huge, absolutely no choice emergency. And the White Lotus wouldn't begrudge her that, because at that point it's her life and the lives of the people that she has to be the Avatar to prevent.
Mm-hmm.
And prevent their loss. So at this point, just as a recap for everybody watching, we've made Korra think about things very carefully. In fact, we've given her a more balanced outlook on the world. She's going to Republic City to understand how it fits into the balance that the Avatar has to maintain. And she's not going with any fanfare or fame. How much have we changed the beginning of Korra?
Pretty sure most of it at this point.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure we destroyed the entire beginning of Korra. The only thing that remains is she's a waterbender. She's not even a waterbending princess. She's just a waterbender.
That brings up one of the early plot points, because I was thinking about this, and I'll straight up transparency here. I never watched much of Korra. I, like most people, kind of got bored of it pretty quick. I didn't even make it through much of Air. But I do recall one of the early plot points in the first part of Air was the pro bending tournament.
Oh yes, let me talk about this, because as somebody who follows all manner of games and sports, I have some things to say about fucking pro bending. Oh god. Okay, first off, Have any of you ever tried to read the wiki article trying to describe the rules of pro bending?
It's a fucking nightmare.
Yes. And
Pro bending's rules make no fucking sense.
here's the thing. I've seen some people argue that I am too harsh on pro bending because of the fact that I have defended blitzball in Final Fantasy X and X-2 and Quidditch in Harry Potter. Here's the difference. I know how the fuck those games work. Blitzball is consistent. It is, for all intents and purposes, it is underwater rugby.
Yeah.
Quidditch, they spend several chapters and entire segments of the first movie making exactly clear how this thing works. You know what the snitch is. You know what to avoid. You know where to throw the things. You know about positions.
Yep. It's an actual sport, and it was actually thought out as a sport.
Yes.
Pro bending is just there to say, oh look, bending's become mainstream in all of society. That's literally the reason this thing exists. It's taking the underground Earth tournaments that Toph was participating in Atla and expanding them to their logical extreme with no thought about how a sport is created.
Yeah, this is what happens when you have people try and create a fictional sport without watching real sports. And you know how I said last week that you need some sort of Earth analog for aliens in order to make them work to a degree. The same applies when it comes to creating a fictitious sport.
Yeah.
You need an analog here in real life.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it was a case of making shit up as they go.
Yeah.
No, really?
At the basis of it all, pro bending is a very, very odd form of dodgeball, maybe, I think would be the best way to describe it, because the whole idea is you use your bending to push your opponents back until they eventually get knocked out into the water. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's the most basic gist as I can give you.
Making it needlessly complicated than it has to be.
I'm sorry. I have to pull up the Avatar wiki for this. There's rules for each type of bending.
Yeah.
Now, granted, there's rules and there's large books of rules and bylaws when it comes to actual sports, and I've made it. And Secret Base has done a few videos. What's called That's Weird or Weird Rules, where they talk about some of the more interesting stories with rules that were established. I think one of my favorite examples of this kind of thing is the infamous holy roller in football. Basically, to try and extend a play, in a Raiders Chargers game in the 70s, they had the idea of, well, just try and fumble the ball, but keep kicking it forward as you're fumbling it. And they managed to keep extending it and get a touchdown to win the game. And immediately the NFL said, "No, you can't do." It's like, no, guys, you can't do that. They, like, 24 hours later, they had already come up with a rule that was specifically designed to kill off any attempt at making the holy roller. But when it comes to pro bending, with a lot of these kind of sports, there's a very simple formula you can follow. Simple set of rules, and then throw monkey wrenches in with people who are trying to exploit the loopholes. That's how you get every dirty play in every sports movie ever. Even in something as asinine as dodgeball.
I mean, this is more than dodgeball, and it's a terrible. I hate pro bending.
I do think all things considered, pro bending as it's shown in the show, this is one of those things we've got to completely nuke. Now, the
I don't think it fits. I don't think it fits the plot even.
no,
that
it
we've
doesn't, and
established.
there was way too much time given to it. However, the idea of pro bending in a different regard, I'm a little bit more willing to go with, because let's be honest, the the pr- the earthbending fighting arenas that we saw in Atla, that was in all but name professional wrestling, even calling it Earth Rumble, i.e. the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, and I think honestly, while pro bending, as it's shown itself, is terrible, and we're nuking it because it's terrible and not a well-designed sport. I think sports revolving around all types of bending, all types of common bending, since airbending is just one family right now, would be evident, and it would be different types of sports. Sure, the Earth Rumble that we saw in Earth Kingdom in Atla probably still exists to this day. It's probably now like a household name in Republic City, especially since they're more technologically advanced than every other part of the world somehow.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Boulder already established his own fighting his own dojo in the style of the New Japan dojo.
Come and join the Boulder at the new Earth Rumble dojo.
And the that's something I could definitely see. And to be quite honest, instead of using given how we talked about using some sort of actual thing as an analog, I think if we're going to have some sort of integrated bending based sport, I think of all the sports that we have available to choose from, the one I'd go with is rugby.
For Earth or for all?
For all three.
Okay. So you're saying everybody is a different type of bender, but they're all playing a rugby match essentially.
It has its core origins in rugby. The core of it being you're gonna be trying to get that ball into their end zone, and everybody else is gonna be trying to stop you. The rules would mostly focus on the ranges when it comes to what bending is allowed and not allowed.
Which is the type of rules that were had in the actual pro bending from the original Korra, but these would be a little more fleshed out, I guess.
Yeah.
But not necessarily something you would explore in our show. It'd be like in our art book or whatever.
Yeah, the key thing that I'm going with this is in the same way that there are positions in different sports, bending is relegated to a specific position. You'd probably have earth as blockers, water as disablers, i.e. they're going to be the people who would try and disable at range, and fire as controllers.
I would see it more as you have your Earth as your goaltenders, so they're your blockers, yeah. Mm-hmm. You have your water as your midfielders. They're your shortstop. They're your mid gap. They fill in the crack. And I'd say that your forwards are firebenders, and the rules are they can't use fire on everybody else, but they can sure use it for mobility. Because we've seen what firebenders can do, jetting fire from their feet.
Given that, I'm guessing that the main rule that you'd have is that it has to be burst. They can't do full on fly high over everybody else.
It's you use it for juking and such, to use more rugby and football terms.
Yeah.
And of course, your midfielders, your waterbenders, are doing their best to extinguish those fires as they're being created by these forwards to stop them from juking as earthbenders are blocking them.
Yeah.
So you've got this synergy now, but I think at this point we're kind of going rails, Monk.
Yeah, this was one of those things that was inevitable to go on rails because you can't just half-ass it. The point that I'm trying to get is that you can't half-assedly introduce a sport without a proper analog.
Yeah, and this has. I mean, I even named the positions after actual positions.
Mm-hmm.
But the waterbenders would also be able to have some mobility, since we've seen the whole scooting on water thing, and I would say that they would be less restricted than the firebenders, only in the fact that since they're midfielders, they're already focusing on staying on their own side to stop the forwards from getting further.
Mm-hmm.
And then like they could use water whips to pass the ball all the way downfield to a forward to make a score and stuff like that.
Yeah. Now, given that the obviously even though we'll be rejiggering both of them, I do think that that we'd have to have some sort of meeting between Korra, Bolin, and Mako in one form or another.
Maybe when Korra's doing more inspection of the city. Mako's a lightning bender who's providing electricity. We already know that.
Yeah.
And you know, she's investigating everything that has to do with Republic City. That's why she'll see some scenes of the new pro bending we've created, which we won't give a spotlight to, but she may go to a game and be like, "Huh, that's an interesting way to use bending."
Yeah.
And that's it. It's either a sight gag or just part of a montage. But she'll go and look at the place that produced the Sato mobiles.
Mm-hmm.
God damn it, Asami. Why did your family have to name those after yourselves? But, you know, and in this respect, she'll meet the people she would have met already. But I think I want to make the important distinction now. This is, again, something we discussed before coming on tonight. The name of this show is The Legend of Korra. Avatar: The Last Airbender was an ensemble cast that had Aang as a central linchpin, but every character was important on Team Avatar.
Mm-hmm.
This is more a singular hero's journey, as we were mentioning earlier. Mako, Bolin, Asami, everybody that joins her in this isn't going to be the same type of central figure within a team that the ensemble cast from the first is. They're going to seem much more like supporting cast. So, because the entire focus here is how the legend of Korra is built, how she establishes her notch in the Avatar cycle, and so Mako and Bolin and Sami are all going to be there, just not nearly as central.
That makes sense. Now, that being said, Asami's personality, I don't need to change all that much, and we'll get to her later. But when it comes to Bolin and Mako, I could easily see it as her being offered at the very least a place to stay, because they don't know that she's the Avatar. As far as they know, she's just some nosy waterbender who just got off the boat.
Yep, and they don't know that she also already has a place to stay at one of the White Lotus branches, because she wouldn't tell anybody that, because the White Lotus wouldn't just let any itinerant waterbender stay there.
Yeah.
So she'd just be like, "No, it's okay. I'll find some place," when people try to offer her stuff, and she'll probably do it a little bit haltingly, a little bit. I don't really know you people.
Yeah.
Been kind of sheltered all my life, type thing.
That's one of the things that I definitely wanted to highlight is that since what the hell was that?
Your microphone suddenly trying to kill you?
That was on my end because my thing's acting up.
Ah.
I had a little bit of an
then
accident a minute ago. Basically, my daughter was trying to get me a glass of milk. It got spilled everywhere, and now everything has gotten fucked up.
Oh.
I'm sorry, James.
So, something that I'm not sure if I made clear when it came to Korra's characterization that would most definitely be made clear here is being in Republic City. you kind of have a bit of a off the boat attitude, because even though she's traveled from different places for most of her life, um, she's not as adept when it comes to people, and so she'll end up doing things that that would get people to go WTF, but she hasn't quite learned that kind of thing.
Like the concept of money. I don't think she would have that yet.
Not the concept of money is one thing. The concept of not getting too close to certain machines is another. Um, and the concept of not trying to wreck the shit of a couple passerby criminals that you see.
You mean like when she did what was essentially mixed martial arts on those two guys in the first episode?
Yeah, and wreck several shops in the process. Now, I wouldn't go so far as to have her break out the metal bending police force over that incident, but more of her still getting pulled in and still getting grilled.
Especially since she would probably try to at least use her water bending to trip them.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, remember, methodical, thinks things through, can't make a fuss, can't make things too flashy. Let's just trip them so whoever's chasing them can catch them.
Yeah.
And then, of course, whatever source of authority comes in will have seen that. They'll have seen some waterbender using her waterbending to stop some dudes. Well, why'd you stop them? Well, they were running away from something. It looked like they were doing something bad.
Mm-hmm. But when it comes to Bolin and Mako, as far as their personality, Bolin, while he got better in spirits, the big problem was he was very clearly made to be the comic relief character.
Made to be the Sokka, yeah.
Except the problem with that is, as Chuck pointed out and as other people have pointed out, Sokka being the comic relief was an accident.
Yeah.
It came about because his voice actor has an improv background and would ad-lib funny or sarcastic lines into the script, and they just integrated that into his character. But his core was always the smart guy. More than anything else. Smart in a different way, a very unconventional way, but still the smart guy.
That's why he became a tactical genius. Mm-hmm. Unconventional tactics are a good thing.
Yeah. And he only really got better when it came to the whole propaganda film thing that he ended up doing. Which
that was such a stupid plot line.
That was such a stupid plot line, but and the whole thing of him learning lava bending, which I'll get to that later. But what I want to focus on with this is the idea is when it comes to his approach, I'd say he's very much between the two brothers. Then I would have them stay as the brothers who always stick together. He is the hardworking. He is hardworking, but a bit on the naive end of things.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas his brother his older brother has a very older brother older brother complex. What I do find funny is the remarks that the staff made is about Mako being Zuko without the angst, which is just a classic case of missing the point.
And they're also outright lying. Mako is full of a shit ton of angst.
Yeah, but the problem is there's not a whole lot to Mako's character aside from things that you would expect from an everyday Joe. I mean, in the core series he wanted to look after his brother and make it as an athlete. Okay, good, but
we can keep that.
We can certainly keep that. I wouldn't have it be pro bending though, especially given his build.
It'd be something else.
I'd actually say I don't know why, but whenever I look at the way he carries himself, I always keep thinking of him as a boxer. I don't know why.
Bending boxing. That'd be interesting. Or maybe normal boxing. He's a firebender, and he lightning bends as his day job.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he literally lightning bends to charge the generators.
Yeah.
Why they haven't discovered dynamos and water wheels yet, I'll never know. But maybe he wants to do something that people don't expect of benders. He wants to make it on the boxing ring without bending.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be boxing specifically. It can be any sort of combat sport. But that's the way his character's designed. Just always gave me that vibe of somebody who probably would be at home in some sort of professional fighting, whether it be boxing or Muay Thai or even full on MMA.
And of course, we already know that all 4 of the bending styles are based off of real martial arts forms. So he's already got practice in the forms.
Mm-hmm.
He's just got to make sure he doesn't use any fire.
Pretty much.
And that actually throws an interesting hook on Mako, making it so that what he wants to do isn't involved with bending. Because he already does bending as a day job, and he knows benders everywhere. Bending's all around him. Bending, bending, bending. That's all he ever hears. Do something without it. Do something that even the normal non-benders do. Do something that nobody would expect a bender to do.
Mm-hmm. I get the feeling that with this kind of context, he would see the appeal for I'll just go with Muay Thai because he has more of that kind of build than a top heavy boxing kind of build.
Yeah.
He when he's between the ropes, everything about him being a bender doesn't matter. It's just who can hit and get hit and keep coming.
It doesn't matter that he can bend. It doesn't matter if his opponent can bend or not. It's just Mako versus whoever.
Yeah.
It isn't he's a bender. This is just him.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting complex we've just given him, though. We basically just gave him an inferiority complex about his own bending.
I'm starting to feel tired over here, guys.
All right, Kiera, stay frosty.
Have a good night, man.
But that certainly is the case, and it would probably create a bit of tension when it comes to later revelations. But the thing is, with those sort of approaches, we do have these two brothers at the very least having a bit more of a reason for why they're around, and that does bring me to the second biggest elephant in the room, and that's how would we handle Tenzin and his family?
So Tenzin does have a space in Republic City.
Mm-hmm. He's on the city council.
Yes, and it's already established that at this point, Korra has probably met Tenzin and his family already, since she did have to go through at least a little bit of airbending training.
Mm-hmm.
And she did so while they weren't at Republic City, because he does have a home outside of it as well.
Yep.
An attempt to reestablish an air nomad temple.
Mm-hmm.
And so when she comes to Republic City, she doesn't even know he's on the council there. She probably wasn't told, or Tenzin didn't bother to bring it up since they were talking about other things. And Tenzin doesn't know she's there either, because she isn't coming in as Korra. She's coming in as insert alias here.
Mm-hmm.
It would likely only get to him. He'd probably only start to hear about her, A, if his children saw her, because they'd recognize her, or B, if she did something that caught the general attention of authority within Republic City. So, for example, we go back to the first conflict that we already thought of by her coming in incognito, where during a point of crisis, she loses her methodical thinking for a second and instinctively uses something that is more suitable for whatever situation she's in than her normal waterbending.
Mm-hmm.
And this catches the attention of the people around her, at least the people who know her, which would be Mako, Bolin, and Asami at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
And it would likely spark from Asami, because if I remember correctly, the Sato family was very, very involved with Republic City's government as well.
Yeah. Although
And so,
before you get on that, I do have to ask the question of would we have to change too much when it comes to Asami compared to the others? Or...
Asami, she's a socialite inventor in her family that is a bunch of socialite inventors that are in the upper crust of society. The most we would have to change is Asami being less involved with Korra on average. Because she doesn't know that Korra is the Avatar, which is... she's just some itinerant waterbender who went to the Sotomobile plants to see what was going on. And so Asami may have seen her, thought she was kind of strange because, what the hell is this waterbender doing here? And why does she look so confused? But Korra may actually be the one to approach Asami more often, because Korra doesn't have any friends. Mako and Bolin are likely to be her first friends,
Mm-hmm.
but she doesn't have any friends that are, well, girls. And as much as I think that it would just be hilarious for Korra to have friends that are guys, this is not the loud, brash, outspoken lady who just makes friends by kind of wrangling people into it that was in the original.
Mm-hmm.
But she might think, well, that other girl was kind of nice to explain what was going on with these Satomobiles, whatever they were called, and she might go back to try and find her. I think that would make sense, given Korra's newly shy and reticent personality we've given her. And so Asami would get to know her, and then Mako and Bolin would start coming around along with her when she's going to the Sotomobile and the Sato Manor to go see Asami, and that's how they all start getting mixed up. And then you have the revelation, and Asami maybe just lets it slip to her dad. Hey, Dad, can waterbenders also earthbend? Because there was this really weird girl who could earthbend and waterbend.
Wait, what?
And at that point, her dad, involved with city politics and also knowing what the hell the Avatar is. I mean, she would know what the Avatar is, but she wouldn't think that, just some random girl's the Avatar. Goes, well, I don't know, honey. I don't think anybody's ever tried it, and unless they were the Avatar, as a joke. And he laughs about it, and she laughs about it. Mm-hmm. And then he mentions it to Tenzin during a city council meeting. He's like, hey, Tenzin, there's an itinerant waterbender who can also earthbend in town. Would you know anything about this? Tenzin goes, what?
It's like, oh no.
And then he's like, oh god. And then he goes down to the local White Lotus branch because he knows where it is because he's involved with them, and he sees her there. What are you doing here? Why are you in Republic City? Why didn't you tell me? And the White Lotus brothers are all like, hey, come on, calm down. Republic City's not a place we know a lot about, especially not the Avatar. She's trying to find out where this all fits in the balance. But she's doing it undercover, because if everybody knew who she was, there'd be a big ruckus, and she couldn't get her job done. And Tenzin would be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense, actually, because, Tenzin's already a stiff neck. Mm-hmm. So he's like, okay, yeah, all right. Then ask her why she earthbent in front of people? And then that's where the White Lotus turns around and goes, Korra? I couldn't help it!
I didn't mean to, I swear!
I'm sorry! Yeah, that's another thing. She'll admit that she's wrong. Oh God, remember how she couldn't admit she was wrong? This is her going, I had no choice. It was the only thing that came to mind. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then she explains the situation, and the White Lotus goes, okay, just try not to do it again. And bring your friends here, because we're going to have to let them in. Because that's the only way to get them all to shut up at that point.
Yeah. I certainly would not have Korra be holding a press conference about her being the Avatar.
Oh God, no! We're not going to Tony Stark this shit.
No,
Fuck
no,
that.
no.
We're not going to Tony Stark. I am Iron Man. This shit.
No. However, one thing, given all of that, one thing that I want to make very clear with this, especially since this was a rule that the canon series ended up breaking a little ways in. Everything that we see happens within Republic City.
Yes.
Republic City is our Judo, our Futo, our Babylon 5, our DS9. There are certain things we can certainly have things happening in the wider world, but that's not what we're seeing. We are seeing this specific place because we've already done the whole going all over the place.
Yeah, this is a character study into Republic City itself. And Monk, I may be a bit premature in saying this, depending on how far we take this to its logical conclusion. But it almost sounds like we're closing the circle in one book. It definitely sounds like we're all of a sudden fulfilling this closed circle in one book because we didn't expect more seasons thing, except that's what we're actually doing. Because as it is, unless there's a much wider implication we give to hook into the other books, every book after what we've now built is going to be contrived.
I very much am taking that approach because originally the mindset was we're doing one season and that's it. That's kind of the approach that I'm taking with so that it's more kind of how we had things with the Star Wars Reconstruction, where this is a closed story, but there
Yes.
are angles that are left open that can be built up on if need be. That's the vibe. That's the vibe that I'm going with this, because I think that's the best approach, and nobody likes a sequel beg.
Yeah.
No, never works out.
Now, when it comes because of that, and because of the fact that we're not spending half of the runtime focusing on pro bending, we have opportunities to have little stories focused on just the day-to-day folk within Republic City,
Which is honestly going to be nice. Tales of Ba Sing Se was a very popular episode series for a reason.
Yeah. This is also the reason why I referenced Futo, Judo, and the like when it came to how I'm looking at Republic City, because by the end of this, Republic City should be as much of a character as the cast is.
Yeah.
Actually, thinking about this, the fact that we're comparing Atla and Korra this way is parallel to another franchise where two particular entries of it had a very similar feel to this.
What are you going with?
The 264 Zelda games.
Where, yeah, okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. Ocarina of Time went across the world to collect all the MacGuffins to eventually get to the goal. That's your hero's journey across the lands.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Termina was very, very self-contained in and around Clocktown, Clocktown was the hub upon which the 4 temples were just spokes on a wheel, and the town itself was as much a character as all the characters within the town.
Now, granted, some of that was done by necessity because of the short amount of dev time that they had. Because I think Majora's Mask came out like a year after Ocarina of Time.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that, but it was still a fantastic game too.
Yeah.
Nintendo does good work sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time. But yes, that's actually a really good comparison to make there, Shades.
Thank you.
And in so doing, the act of making Republic City a character, with our establishment of her just investigating, we've already settled the foundation for that.
Mm-hmm.
She knows about pro sports that involve benders. She knows about the new type of industry caused by involving tons of benders doing the same thing.
Yeah.
She knows about the innovations in technology. She's seen the lower crust of society amongst Bolin and Mako. She's seen the upper crust of society with Asami and Tenzin. Because let's be realistic here. Tenzin is basically an aristocrat. He doesn't see himself that way. He acts very austere, but because of his position with the city council, he is an aristocrat.
Yeah.
A bureaucratic one at that.
It's also through this that you can have Korra present herself differently to accommodate the different rungs that she's interacting with, and if that means that you have to put that. And of course, you can use this as outfit fodder for all the fan artists out there.
Hey, we like to see our characters dress up. What can we say, right?
Yes.
This also, though, the fact that she sees the disparate ends of society is also going to help facilitate the primary conflict with Amon and the Equalists, which I'm going to be honest, I want to keep Amon and the Equalists.
Yeah,
for
I have no objections to keeping them, because plus Steve Blum needs to earn that paycheck.
Yes, I was going to say, not the least of which being Steve Bloom as Amon. But I'm going to put forward something that this may have been a thought a lot of other people had when Korra first ran, at least with Book of Air. Amon's whole thing about stealing bending from benders to make them just like everybody else. While the show was actually releasing, because that's when I was watching it, as it was releasing on its schedule, which I really shouldn't have done. The amount of disappointment I had during certain reveals was palpable because I'd been waiting a week for the reveal to occur. The theory that I personally had was Amon was someone who had somehow discovered energy bending for himself and was acting as a sort of anti-avatar to take bending away from the world to make everybody equal. Because as we saw, energy bending can seal a bender. That was established at the end of Atla.
I've seen some people argue that it didn't seal it; it more changed their affiliated element, but I didn't see anything that would imply that.
I mean, it's not... Ozai couldn't airbend after he was done, or waterbend or earthbend, and he certainly could no longer firebend.
Mm-hmm.
And the lion turtle even said it would seal his bending.
Yeah.
It would remove it. So, my theory, and I don't know if there were a lot of other people with that theory, there may have been, was that he was an energy bender. Someone who had either looked upon a lion turtle as much as, Aang had looked upon a lion turtle, and was imparted with that knowledge, and saw how benders tended to be at, or at least seen through his skewed lens, that benders tended to be in the upper parts of society, and non-benders didn't.
I would go a different direction with that, actually. Similar but different. I think the idea should be that he sees that benders are the cause of all the problems in society. And every time shit goes wrong, it's because a bender did something. And he's just tired of it. That would actually help motivate him to be the anti-avatar.
I'd also like to say that he's not a bender prior to getting energy bending. The reveal that he was a water bender, blood bending to somehow close off other people's bending, pissed me off because that
I
breaks
agree with that.
every established rule about bending and water benders.
Yeah.
You can only blood bend during a full moon because of the influence of the moon on water bending.
Mhm.
That was established. And it was never established that anything could take away bending besides energy bending. Because if blood bending could have done it, I'm sure Aang would have asked Katara to help him with that.
And
I know you hate blood bending, but to save the world, can you blood bend Ozai's bending away, please?
And I'm also certain that the woman who taught her blood bending existed would have at least tried that at least once on the firebenders who did all the shit to her.
Yes, she was no saint. She would have tested exactly how far blood bending can go.
Mm-hmm.
She would have been well established in how blood bending works. And so, Amon being the brother of a councilman shouldn't apply. That's the whole unnecessary connection syndrome.
Yeah.
And B, being a waterbender that was blood bending people's bending away. No, fuck that. There's my nuke right there. I've rolled the dice. There's my nat 20 on a nuke. Fuck you. Amon was never a bender. He was a normal dude who lucked into energy bending and is telling people, fuck benders. Everybody's going to be normal now.
Although that does bring me to an interesting idea given that.
Okay.
Because of the fact that he's, first off, would you keep the demonstrations where he's seen on stage in front of crowds of followers removing bending from people?
No. He works better as a villain in the shadows.
Which makes sense given the fact that his name is Amon, the hidden one.
And he wears a mask all the time. I also think Amon should be an alias, and not just, his real name with him wearing a mask.
Yeah.
Or was Amon an alias? Was Amon an alias?
I believe it was one of those things where they never made it quite clear because they clearly didn't think things through. But no, I would have Amon be a alias, especially since because of the fact that it is an alias, you can
Amon was an alias in the main as well.
You can go with the notion that anyone feasibly could be him.
Exactly. By making him a masked villain who works in the shadows and removes people's bending, he then becomes the same way V did in V for Vendetta. You can't kill an idea.
Mm-hmm.
He becomes a symbol.
And yeah, a lot of people were making comparisons to V.
Yes, I know. I remember. But I'm bringing this up because he always should have just been Amon. Mm-hmm. His mask should never be removed, I might add. Like, at least not on camera. Like, maybe if Korra defeats him, she takes off the mask, looks at him, goes, I don't know who that is, and puts the mask back on him. Like, the whole idea is the mask is the symbol, and the name is the mask. It's all him.
Although, one thing I had. So given that we have that Amon is a normal person who, I get the feeling that the way that his outlook and his rhetoric, he sees bending itself as a imbalance. That he is only able to see the negatives, anytime he sees some form of bending, whether it be the lightning benders powering the city, firebenders allowing for people to survive in areas that they normally couldn't, waterbenders doing what they do on the northern and southern poles. he would see that as a wrongness in the world. Um, Now, how extreme you want to go with that, i.e., does he see that same kind of thing with animals that bend? I'd argue he doesn't think that far. He's only looking at people and how they bend. When it comes to just animals doing it, he doesn't recognize that as hit.
Ooh. Light bulb.
Go ahead.
To make that point stick harder, have him be someone who's only ever lived in Republic City, so that he never experienced that.
Yeah. So now, obviously, he wouldn't be exposed to something like sky bisons, but badger moles. Actually, now that I think about it, the only one he could feasibly be exposed to would be badger moles, because the dragons are they're not dead, but they're not exactly easy to find.
Mm.
And of course, when it comes to the sky bisons, I'm not gonna. There are probably more than there are probably more than one, but they are extremely endangered.
Appa was the only sky bison we saw during all of Atla, I think.
Whoa.
Ooh, Shades, you okay there?
Did it again. Try to change one little thing to make my life a little easier, and it fucks everything up.
But when it comes to his approach, he probably spent most of his life in Republic City. Yes, so a lot of the naturally occurring bending he probably didn't see. And I could easily see him if he did encounter a lion turtle. I could easily see him rationalizing it as a spirit of the earth, and not as much of a naturally occurring animal as everything else was.
And the fact that he was given energy bending by a lion turtle, he would actually kind of see it as, this is the world telling me there is an imbalance. I've got to do something about it.
Yeah.
Mm.
After all, at this point, he's probably extremely pessimistic about the world and slightly narcissistic about how he's the only one who sees it.
In that regard, I
Yeah.
could see the lion turtle having the mindset of, I will let us see if you can actually follow through on it and give him energy bending as a test.
Yeah.
Essentially, if it sounds like I'm going with the idea that Amon basically made a Faustian bargain, that's exactly where I'm going with this. And believe you me, I am considering this to be a bit of a Chekhov's gun.
Boy, I know where that's going.
So obviously, initially, Amon would probably send agents to try and capture Korra, because because removing the Avatar's bending would make for one hell of a morale boost for his faction. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it would just be for him, the difficulty would be, where do I find her?
Well, I'd say that little incident that revealed her being the Avatar to the rest of the cast would be the sign that where we're entering the shit gets real territory, because that's when I'd have the attack on her possibly getting captured and getting rescued by Bolin and Mako.
Mm-hmm.
Because I could easily see a situation where one of the assassins is gonna have the mindset of, we are highly trained in dealing with benders, And Mako just grins because it's like, oh, you think I'm gonna fight you like a bender would?
Nope.
Also, can I just say that we need to the fact that Amon somehow has an entire corps of trained chi blockers, as if he somehow, got that from, was it Ty Lee that was the chi blocker in
Yeah.
Atla?
It's
Yeah,
never established that Ty Lee created that technique.
yeah, but she was one,
Yeah.
and she was like the only one we ever saw using it.
Mm-hmm. I don't
So-
like the idea of them just being able to chi block that casually. I would rather have their version of chi blocking be the equivalent of the Vulcan nerve pinch, i.e., the only way that they can since we had that large argument last Friday about Thief, the blackjack in Thief, i.e., it can be reliably used to knock someone out,
But that's it.
You can't just use it willy nilly when they're aware of you, because otherwise you're just hitting them. Otherwise you're just poking at them. No, it has to be a very specific spot, and it's best that they're unaware of you, because it's kind of hard to use that in the middle of a fight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would also because Ty Lee had trained in it enough that she could use it in combat somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
But from what we've seen in Atlas, she was the only person who could. So getting to that level, first of all, means you have to find somebody to teach you chi blocking, and then you have to practice it for forever. Like it was very much implied that she had been practicing it probably about as long as she had been dancing.
Given that, do you think it would be reasonable that Amon would be the only one that we see that has as much ability with chi blocking as Ty Lee did?
Yeah, because he needs to be able to stop people to use energy bending on them to take their bending.
Mm-hmm.
So Amon would probably go, well, this is, he gets it from the lion turtle. I can't really do this unless they stand still for it, or I get them into a position where I can do this and establish the link. And they can fight back. It's my willpower versus theirs. I've got to make sure to break their willpower beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have to make sure that they aren't going to be able to move. So what can I do about that? Well, I remember the stories of the Avatar and some of the people around him. There was that girl who could stop people by hitting certain points on their body. What was that? And he'd go investigate that.
Yeah.
And he'd probably find records about it in some record department of Republic City. Because like we said, this Amon has only ever lived in Republic City. And he'd find out what it's called. He'd find out how it's taught. At least the very, very basics of it would be discussed as a record of historical fact. And then he'd look out for people who might know it. And Republic City is a melting pot. It's meant to be evocative, as you said, of early immigration New York.
Mm-hmm.
So he's gonna find someone. There's gonna be one person, statistically speaking, who knows how to chi block even while in the midst of combat. Hell, maybe even Ty Lee is in Republic City, and he goes and dupes his way into learning it from her.
Yeah.
And I mean, we don't necessarily show that he learned it from Ty Lee. We don't even necessarily explain it, except again in our backstories on our art books.
Yeah.
But he's learned chi blocking to the proficiency where he can fight someone hand to hand and use it.
Mm-hmm. And that does bring me to one other thing. Now, as far as how this kind of thing would go, I would actually argue that the kidnap happens when because given how Korra breaks down after her first attack, I'd say that this would be the kind of thing that would happen at a extended stay at the Sato estate. She visits Asami, ends up getting talked into going to this gala-like event. Decides to stay the night, and that's when and ends up waking up in a prison. because obviously they wouldn't try and do a direct attack, and I'm pretty sure Amon would teach them don't if you try and fight if you try and fight fair with these people, you're gonna lose. Don't fight fair. Go when they're weakest. And I do think that the rest of the team would catch wind and break her out. And this could easily be where you plant the seeds of distrust about the Sato estate should be ridiculously secure. So how the hell did they get in? Because it seemed like a plot line that they were going with for the last third of the canon season was who is Amon, and who's working with him, because he's way too well funded to just be some grassroots thing. Now within the kind of setup that we've gone with, I don't necessarily like the idea of having it be a massive whodunit, and it wouldn't fit with what we've established. Which means that whole Tarlock is Amon thing is gonna get thrown out the window, because while I liked the diversion, because they made it very clear they wanted you to think that Tarlock and Amon were the same person. It does. Given what we've established with Amon here, it doesn't work.
Exactly.
Now Sato being an equalist, that I'm perfectly willing to go with. Although I'm excising the whole platinum thing, because that feels like DBZ syndrome. Having something that's for the specific reason of rendering another power moot. It's like, hey, I can bend metal. Here's metal that's unbendable. The approach but as far as why the idea that, oh, the family was killed by a bender, so now I'm an equalist. That's fucking stupid.
Yeah, it's the whole. I can see. Well, I'm going to put it this way. I can see Hiroshi Sato, wanting to take revenge on bending, because he's a normal guy who lost the love of his life, to bending.
Mm-hmm.
I can see him wanting to join Amon for that. But there's going to be more to it. Not just, oh, they killed my wife. There's got to be other things benders have either done around him that negative things he started noticing maybe after his wife died. And he comes to the same philosophical conclusion that Amon did. Anytime anything bad happens, it's benders to blame.
If you don't mind me making one little change to make him a little bit sympathetic.
Mm-hmm.
I do have it that one of the reasons that he is so committed is for Asami's sake.
Yes.
Because now obviously in this case Asami still is not a bender.
And she also still doesn't know that her dad's part of the Equalists.
Mm-hmm. But the approach that I would go with this is that he would have the mindset that as long as there's this whole thing with benders on the upper echelon causing something, inevitably one of them would do something that would harm his daughter, and that's not something he could handle.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't even know.
Guys, I'm gonna real quick, guys. I'm gonna go ahead and head out. I'm fading here, and I'm not really contributing much.
All right, man. All right, man. Thanks for stopping in, and stay frosty, man.
Yep.
Same to you guys.
But it's for Asami's sake that he does it, because he sees it as, well, as long as there's benders on the at the upper echelon of things, there's always going to be a glass ceiling for Asami.
At least that's what he thinks. Not realizing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All the negativity he's cultivated from the death of his wife, seeing all the bad stuff happening around benders, it's going to make him automatically assume that a normal person like his daughter can only get so far before she's blocked because she doesn't have bending.
And in that same regard, one thing that I would, it's just a minor thing, but one thing that I would change with Asami is that she is reputed as a mechanical genius.
Yes. Rather than it being slightly hidden, it's actually just fact.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because initially she was helping her dad, but she wasn't seen as the true engineer genius that she is, because she really is. And yeah, so I think that's a good slight change to make. That her genius is actually recognized and made to be a part of her reputation around the city. Yeah.
Yeah, especially since that would certainly add to the whole socialite thing, both positively and negatively. Because on the positive end, you could have certain people compliment her abilities with machines, and on the other hand, you could have some people do the haughty laugh about her getting her hands dirty with machines.
Oh dear, why would you ever do those things? Leave that to the lower class.
Yeah, because look. I love the whole slobs versus snobs thing in certain films back in the '80s, and I'm keeping that, because it fucking works.
Class warfare is true to life.
Mm-hmm. And in that same regard, because of that, I could easily go with the notion that once he catches wind that his daughter got involved with the fights against the Equalists, that's when he starts having tension with Amon. He can't outright go against him because he's seen what Amon can do, but he doesn't like the situation that he's being pulled into.
To choose between equalizing the world or the potential harm to his daughter.
Yeah, and ultimately in this kind of thing, he chooses his daughter. That if it means having an unequal world, but she's able to thrive in it, that's worth the cost.
Which is also a good way to show part of the moral behind all this. The world is unequal, but everyone can profit and prosper given they put in the work.
Mm-hmm.
That's how meritocracy works. There's an Aesop in our version of Korra, guys!
Now when it comes to the climax of the thing, because inevitably, the Equalists would start to act more and more open as the story progresses.
But Amon wouldn't be the one. There wouldn't be any of those big open things from Amon. It's just the people that are convinced of his cause going out there and causing trouble.
Yeah. And I think
some of them are going to include benders.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to that, that's going to escalate into fighting in the streets, and the council divided on how to handle this situation, and inevitably getting the Republic Army involved.
And because of the chaos on the streets, Korra is going to be more and more hard pressed to hide who she is, as not just waterbending can fend with everything.
Yeah.
Bolin and Mako are going to try and assist her with their firebending and earthbending, respectively. Or no, earthbending and firebending, respectively. I said that backwards. Excuse me.
Yep.
But it's going to come to a point where their bending, no matter how strong it is, doesn't necessarily have the Avatar's oomph behind it. And she's going to be forced to stop something that they can't stop using a bending skill that isn't waterbending again. And of course, at this point, there's no way the White Lotus or Tenzin could blame her, because now it's open riots in the street and essentially a civil war.
Yeah.
And that's how Amon's going to learn that the Avatar's in town, because there's nobody else who can use all four elements. She's going to have to.
Yeah. Although, speaking of that, are you having it that she knows all three except air, or that she knows all four of them?
That she knows all four. There's no reason for her to have a blockage with air. That was contrived and retarded. Like, I can use everything but air. Why can't I use air? You're not being patient and whimsical enough. What? And then, oh, all my other bending is blocked. All of a sudden, I can use air. Literally nothing had changed about her, other than all her other bending was blocked. No. She knows all four. She trained under Tenzin outside of Republic City because he was at his Air Nomad Temple. She can do it too. So yes, I'm saying that she definitely knows, at least to some extent, all four elements.
Yeah.
Maybe not the extent that she needs to as the Avatar. She didn't go through an accelerated program like Aang did, because it's not like she was trying to end a world war. But she knows them.
Yeah.
And she can put the strength of the Avatar behind them.
Yeah. Now, that does bring me to one other factor, and that is because the mindset that I had as far as how you get General Iroh into this whole situation is things end up going bad enough to the point where, as far as the rest of the world is concerned, Amon has effectively pulled off a coup d'etat on the city. And that would be something that would bring... I'm not even going to call them the army. I'm going to call them the Republican Guard. And largely because I think that rolls better off the tongue and fits better with what we're doing.
Yes.
What ends up you have kind of in that regard, you have kind of a twofold event. You have the issue of, if the Iroh does not want to see the city raised, but his superiors have the attitude of, this has gone way too far. Take out everybody. Iroh is trying to stall it, and through some connections that he likely has, because much like his ancestor, he knows that sometimes you've got to bend the rules in order to get things done.
He's also...
Go ahead.
I was going to say, he's much like his granduncle. He's also likely a member of the White Lotus.
Yeah, he would probably try and get somebody to relay a message to the Avatar, just saying, find a way to stop Amon, and you've got to do it with I can only hold off the army for so long, because if they force my hand, this is going to get a whole lot worse than it is. I would not have the idea of the army getting put in some sort of trap and him getting thrown in jail. The approach here is he is trying to stop the Republican Guard from committing a full-on assault on the city. And if you want to know how bad that would end up being, I recommend watch the final scene in Gangs of New York. That's how bad this would get.
Yep. Yep. How did I legitimately was like, Gangs of New York. I remember the ending scenes of that. And then all of a sudden you bring it up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, in the end, what's going to happen here is that there are going to be people who are negatively affected by this who are not a part of it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And if the Republican Guard has to come in, you're going to see the population of Republican City reduced to a tenth of what it is. Tons of infrastructure damage. People who were implicated are going to be summarily executed. Even some people who weren't implicated are going to be summarily executed. It's just going to be part of that particular set of circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, what's going to happen is that if the Republican Guard has to become involved, if General Iroh is pushed to the very limit, even the Avatar herself could die. It could be just a casualty of the war, especially since they're not going to go in for direct combat, since there's a madman who can somehow stop bending.
Mm-hmm.
Better not to encounter him at all, and just artillery fire from the sea. They'll rain fire on Republic City, literally, because they're firebenders.
Well, given how lava bending was brought up, they'd probably end up using that. Just have a combined force of firebenders and earthbenders just throw balls of lava at the place.
Yep, and they're going to know that it's going to cause collateral damage,
mm-hmm.
and they're going to say it's an unfortunate necessity due to the fact that there is a madman who can take away bending.
Yeah.
That if they tried to get in close, they could potentially have their bending stolen forever, and nothing gets done.
Mm-hmm.
And so General Iroh sends the message through the White Lotus. The White Lotus lets Korra know while she's there at one point, you need to stop Amon. This is your duty as the Avatar. He's going to upset the balance.
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as that whole thing, one thing that I want to establish when it comes to how bad the city ends up getting, and this is the reason why I made clear the micro stories and having Republic City be its own character, because in this tail end, you're seeing Republic City go from this thriving cosmopolitan place with people of all walks of life, all trying to make a living one way or the other, to almost a ghost town in how it feels, covered in mist. The color is a lot more toned down compared to how it would look previously. A lot of a thriving market street and the like just completely gone. The rows of shops that would usually bring in fishermen and the like is more or less abandoned or fall into disrepair. The
stadium pro bending is played at is covered in rubble.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see familiar sights and familiar places.
Yeah.
The power generators, the Sato engineering facilities, everything in states of despair. It's the only way you could put it. It's not. You'd think that a building can't despair, but this would be these settings, these places in despair.
Mm-hmm.
And in the background, you're going to hear the muted cries and yells and shouts and screams of people fighting and dying.
Yeah.
This isn't going to be pretty.
No.
In fact, it's going to be probably a lot worse than what was shown at the end of the Book of Air in Korra.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
But the reason for that is the contrast, and when it comes to it, because obviously, no matter how we swing this, um, Amon has to have some kind of base under the city. What would be the most thematically appropriate place to hide it?
That really depends. Do we want him thematically as a villain to hide it someplace already hidden in shadow so that nobody can chance upon it? Do we want it to be symbolic? But not too cliched symbolic, like hiding it under the statue of Aang.
Given how we are dealing with a lot of themes with the Avatar universe that you would see in an epic, I would say someplace symbolic, but not that obvious.
So how about the Republican Manor itself, a place where the city council always meets?
That I would be, given how he probably has a few people on the city council on his side. I would say that would be the most ideal spot to do it.
Well, and I'm also going again with the with the V for Vendetta mirror here. The whole fact that the Guy Fawkes mask in the gunpowder plot in Parliament. So
yeah. Now, obviously, we're not doing the whole blowing up Parliament thing, or blowing up the Republic mansion.
But the fact that he's under there.
Yeah. And this is a place that was probably seen in a couple small stories up until this point, and seen as the beacon of Republic, the pride and joy of the place. And now it's being turned into, when they happen upon it, it's become a literal fortress.
Sinister, it's fortified, it's unwelcoming, it's essentially a place of... It's now no longer a place of the Republic.
Yeah, it has, and that is, and with this kind of setup, you can easily have the whole storming the castle kind of motif.
Yep.
You know, at first it's just Team Avatar involved with this, but seeing them fight, that brings other people to help out, both benders and non-benders. More in a mindset of get the fuck out of our town. And
go ahead. I also think that this is where, even though they are supporting characters, Mako Bolin and Asami are going to have their chances to shine, not just as her friends, not just as Korra's friends, but as combatants in their own right.
Yeah.
I see Asami, since we already have Hiroshi so worried about his daughter and the potential for her to be hurt, there is no way he did not put her through combat training, especially since she's a non-bender. Not to mention she has, her genius intellect. She had that shock glove already, which is mostly underwhelming. No, I think she would have something much more genius and sinister involved in her particular inventions that she could use to fight with.
What do you think?
Possibly.
What, an exosuit?
No, we're not going to go the mecha suit route.
I didn't say a mecha suit. The reason I said an exosuit is those kind of exo armor skeletons that you'd see in, as much as I hated the game, not Infinite Warfare, but Advanced Warfare and the like.
No, I still don't think it would be like that. I think that it would be ingenious hidden weapons. She'd be a trap master. Almost ninja-like in that respect.
All right, that I'm more willing to go with.
Like darts and needles that are propelled by piezoelectric current rather than gas, so they're a lot faster. Because she's going to know how piezoelectrics works because she's an engineering genius. She's going to know how to miniaturize it.
She'd probably end up inventing a coil gun.
Not for this, but later down in history, probably. But yeah, she'd have a bunch of hidden stuff, and she'd also, she'd have trained in normal blades and normal clubs and stuff as part of her martial training.
Yeah.
So she is also going to have, probably on the inside of her arms, some sort of spring-loaded mechanism to bring melee weapons to hand, just in case she runs out of traps to use.
Mm-hmm.
You always have a backup.
Yeah.
So that's going to be her thing. And I think that this is also going to establish very firmly, rather than fleetingly as it was in the show, a romance, or at least begin the foundation of a romance between her and Mako. Because Mako's going to see that a normal can outdo other benders and these chi blockers without worrying about her bending.
Mm-hmm.
And he's gonna be doing the same, because they said, we know how to deal with benders, and he already knew that, so he's stopped using his bending.
Yeah.
And they're gonna impress each other, and a little bit of witty banter between them for that, because we gotta have those moments in Avatar. Bolin is going to slowly get left behind, as he's just kind of fist fighting and earthbending at the same time, and he's gonna wonder, what can't his brother do? He's even going after the girl. What can't my brother do in all of this? That's his little bit of naivety coming into play, because I would imagine that Bolin probably slightly idolizes his older brother in this situation.
I have to kick myself retroactively, because I just realized what I ended up turning Bolin into, to a degree.
What?
Alphonse.
Unintentional as it may have been, Monk, you are correct, sir. Okay, well, Bolin is the Alphonse of this particular Winry Ed Bolin triangle. Winry Ed Alphonse triangle.
I can't. Now, if somebody's asking, would that make Mako Ed? No, he's too tall.
That makes Asami Ed. Somehow.
I am not even going down that train of thought. I am going right back along.
No. The three of them are fighting very well, in fact. Even though Bolin has no formal fight training, unlike Mako, he's using his earth in ingenious ways. He's not throwing it around, and he's not fully covering his body in it. He's keeping himself mobile, and maybe just his fists get a small layer of dirt and rock on them as he punches. Yeah. And he's doing this reflexively. Like, the earth is not on him when he's punching. The earth is only on him as sort of a reactive armor.
Mm-hmm.
And he's doing this unconsciously as he's watching Asami. Watching how her traps are reactive. And he's thinking, I could do that too. But I don't have any... She can't give me any traps. What do I have? I have dirt. There's a lot of dirt around.
There's a lot of dirt.
Bolin is...
A lot of stone.
Yeah. And Bolin, as poorly portrayed as he was in the show, Bolin is not stupid. Naivety does not equate to stupidity.
No.
Bolin is going to be, especially, him and Mako have been together, they're both smart guys. They're both hardworking. They both just have different views and wants in life, which is everybody. Bolin's going to go, how can I make my bending really effective in all of this without just constantly bending Earth around me, which is going to tire me? Burst bending. Well, Earth's not really known for burst bending. So what? Burst bending. And he's going to, through sheer willpower and determination, just, if fire can burst bend, and water can burst bend, and air can burst bend, then so can Earth. Fuck you, fight me. And he's gonna do it. And it's gonna form slowly at first, but Mako and Asami are going to notice eventually as he's doing it, and he catches back up to them. Because he's kind of lagging behind because he's trying to sync it all together. First he doesn't even really get it. First he's just kind of earthbending, and then sometimes punching, and then it starts melding. And we have this nice moment where all three of them are using different specialties, but they're all in sync, goal-wise and mindset. Whereas Korra at this point has gone full on 4 elements Avatar. She's not Avatar mode yet, but full on 4 elements Avatar. Chi blockers can't get near her, and she's rushing because she knows that if she doesn't stop this, everybody's going to die. And this isn't like Korra angry, charging, not thinking. This is Korra scared, worried. And she's like, I've got to stop this. 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 How can I stop this? What do I need to do to stop this?
Especially since,
she's going to be...
again, this is why I established that whole thing of her connecting with the people in Republic City, because her mindset is all the people at the various shops that she had visited, the people that she had hung out with during her time here. Because I'm pretty sure by the end of this, she's probably spent a year in Republic City.
In Republic City, yeah.
That's enough time to establish a network of friends.
Yes, and while none of them are the core of Team Avatar, like Mako Bolin and Asami, she's going to think of that nice old lady who gave me a bowl of soup while I was still seen as a homeless wanderer, or that little girl who was selling flowers on the street corner the other day.
Yeah.
She's going to be thinking of every innocent face she's ever come across. She's even going to be thinking of some of the assholes, but they don't deserve to die.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just going to be like, if I don't do something, because I'm me, because I'm the person who's supposed to stop this, all these people are going to die. And that's when it's going to kind of click for her, which is when she starts using the four element, but not the Avatar mode. So like all 4 elements at the same time. Because she realizes at that point, she'd heard the stories from Zuko and Katara and Toph and Sokka. She'd heard the stories from the White Lotus. She'd heard the stories from Tenzin. She'd read the books. She'd learned so much. And it's right then that all of the words come together and click, and she realizes what the Avatar does. And she knows where Republic City fits in it finally. And it's just the next place I have to make sure is safe. It doesn't matter that it's not one of the other bending kingdoms. It's a place where all the bending kingdoms have come together. Balance should be protected here most of all. And with that revelation, she bursts in on Amon.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, go ahead.
I think that was some of that you could put in a few 1-second flashbacks.
Oh, definitely. Both of things that she heard from the old Team Avatar and of the people in Republic City, and you could alternate in specific ways so that they echo, so that you get a call and response sort of effect.
Mm-hmm.
One flashback about Aang's feelings of responsibility, flashing forward to specific people in Republic City who she feels responsible for. Mm-hmm. And that sort of call and response is going to not only build tension, but it's going to give resolve. She's going to become prepared. Her willpower is going to be at the highest it's ever been. You're going to get the scene of the doors bursting inwards and some chi blocker guys falling backwards unconscious, because that's a classic action shot I'm not willing to give up for this bursting in on Amon moment. It's a good action shot too.
And
go ahead.
I'd say that through this, having her with a one-on-one encounter with Amon just feels like a natural move.
Yes, absolutely. She told like, probably as they all came into Republic Manor, both the benders and non-benders helping her and the rest of Team Avatar, she probably told them, guys, I've got Amon. Make sure everybody else is safe. Like, no, not defeat the invaders. Make sure the people are safe. You know. Mm-hmm. And so, and that one comment is going to be a huge like it's not going to seem big, but it's a gigantic moment of this avatar's priorities are in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
She only wants the people to be safe. So, Amon versus Korra is going to be pretty big.
Yeah, I mean, you have one person who has all four elements at their disposal, and one person who doesn't, but also has the great equalizer in the sense. And this would be one of the moments where I'd say an easy way to make this a threat is Amon getting one stray hit and it messing with, say, her arm, just briefly, and it makes clear this guy is an adept with chi blocking. And
that's exactly how that could work. You get stray blow, her arm kind of goes numb for a second.
Mm-hmm.
And she realizes that unlike the rest of the chi blockers that they've been fighting who have to get them unawares, this guy can do it while he's fighting.
Yeah. And because of that, you kind of have this cat and mouse dynamism where he keeps trying to get close enough to actually block her, while she keeps using bending to keep him at a distance.
And he is well trained.
Mm-hmm.
Despite her training in bending and the fact that she's using all four elements, he's not getting hit. Or if he does get hit, he's absorbing the blow in a way that the force is really not that noticeable. He's wearing a little bit of armor. Even in his original design, his outfit is padded in a way that makes hitting him a little less effective.
Mm-hmm.
But this man has prepared to fight everyone, and he knew that one day he'd have to fight the Avatar. So this is a culmination for Amon of, holy shit, the Avatar is right in front of me. I gotta get her.
Yeah. However, now the one thing that we haven't touched on in this entire experiment is the Avatar state. And I'd say this would be the moment where it's actually utilized as the final trump card. Whether it's through dramatic desperation or not, the point is that it ends up being used, and this is where Amon has his moment of humbling.
Yes, and in fact, I think it is going to be that dramatic desperation. He's going to eventually get another glancing blow on her, and they're going to start adding up,
mm-hmm.
and she's not going to be able to bend as effectively, and eventually he's going to get close enough to stop her. And she doesn't know how to get out of it. She doesn't know how long chi blocking will last.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't know. She just knows that this guy can take away bending, and she can't let that happen. And he's going to start the energy bending, and that's when we're actually going to confirm that Amon can energy bend. Because up to this point, we've never seen him taking the powers away. We just know he can.
Mm-hmm.
And it's at that point that he's going to energy bend. He's going to try and take away her bending powers, and whatever last inspirational piece she needs, whatever flashback it has to be, maybe even a whisper from Aang himself from within the Avatar cycle.
Mm-hmm.
There's always, it's going to let her know there's always a light beyond the darkness. There's always a way out from the cave. There's always something that will get you past the crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, she's going to bring everything together, and the Avatar state is going to activate and repulse him. It won't necessarily force the energy bending back on him like how the tug of war between Ozai and Aang worked, because he's not a bender of any other type. It's not like you're fighting, taking away his bending and sealing him. It's just getting him away so that you can defeat him.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when things really take the turn for the worst for him. In the Avatar state, she doesn't need to use her arms and legs if she doesn't have to. Not that it would matter. The Avatar state would likely restore her chi flow.
Yeah.
But in the Avatar state, she's going to have the experience of all the other avatars. She's going to know where her place is in the world. And she's going to know that this guy has to be stopped. And that's going to be the epic comeback fight and eventually his defeat.
Now, as far as how that plays out, there's a couple key things that I want to make clear with this. One, while he was able to hold his own early on and even have an advantage because he has more experience, against the Avatar state, he is completely outmatched and on the defensive. And
especially now that he's getting hit by way more bending attacks.
And it is in this kind of moment where he makes one last desperate attempt to try and get in close and energy bend again. And that but while he's able to make contact, his energy bending is gone. And he ends up hearing the voice of the lion turtle.
Of the lion turtle.
I told you this was gonna be a Chekhov's gun, that he had made a Faustian bargain.
I knew where you were going with it too.
The lion turtle essentially rebukes him. Basically dresses him down that he didn't have the conviction to actually follow through with his ideals. He just became exactly what he hated. And as much as the lion turtle can give bending, it can take it back. And thus you kind of have the dramatic irony of a man who was trying to take away bending because he saw it as something that needed to be done to equalize the world, is himself made equal because the power that he relied on is taken away from him.
Yep. And it is probably at that point that he as dispirited as he is, he just kind of gets steamrolled by Korra at that point. Because he's just kind of out of it. And she knocks him down, likely traps him, things of that nature. We get the scene where she takes off his mask, but we don't see it because, as I said, his face is unimportant.
Yeah.
It's a detail we do not need. And she's like, I don't even know who this guy is. And this is after like the White Lotus has shown up. The small equalist rebellion has been stopped. The White Lotus is like, who was this guy? Do you know him? And she's like, no. And the last words, maybe the slightest hint drop of a hook of, if we ever wanted to make anything later, we could. Mm-hmm. Amon is going to say those fateful words of, I'm not the only person who thinks like this, and you can't kill an idea. Or something along those lines. Obviously, not exactly those words.
Which would be the ideal way to introduce people like Unalaq,
exactly.
People like people like the Red Lotus, people like Kuvira.
Yeah.
Because when you stop and think about it, each of the villains within the Legend of Korra was all working on a different interpretation of equality. Now,
with the Red Lotus being the stupidest to try to work on equality through anarchy.
Yeah, I will say that the approach that I would have with each of them is, when it comes to Unalaq, his approach is bringing back the he sees himself as someone who feels that spirits do not have the influence that they used to. Do you remember? If there's any analog I could think of, it would be the bad guy in Halloween 3, which is not as bad as a film as everyone thinks it is. it's just that Halloween was too attached to Michael Myers, and that was ultimately the problem. But his plan was to bring back the pagan elements of All Hallows Eve. Now, when it comes to the Red Lotus, I would actually argue that they were a radical faction, not trying to create anarchy, but seeing the lack of airbenders as an imbalance and trying to find different methods to create airbenders.
See that.
And that research ultimately what got them in trouble and what got them booted. So there were people who were trying to discover the secrets of bending so they could figure out how to create more airbenders.
But they also obviously did it in an extremely unethical and immoral fashion,
Yeah.
like human experimentation without consent and such.
And because of that, I would argue that the members of the Red Lotus have been integrating themselves so much with their particular styles of bending that they almost come off as quasi elementals.
See that.
Like they've gone so far off the deep end with their research that they aren't as human anymore. And when it comes to Kuvira, that's a fairly simple approach. Kuvira was a fascist. Let's not even dance around that.
She was absolutely a fascist.
She was, and I would say that her approach is in trying to unify all the Earth kingdoms. She's basically a villainous spin on the King of Keen.
Yeah, the villainous spin on the first emperor of China. Yeah. And you wouldn't have to really change much with Kuvira. She was ironically the best villain out of the four, even though her book was probably the second worst.
Yeah,
with the worst being Spirit. No questions asked.
Now, as far as the whole thing about discovering the secrets of the first Avatar, that's getting nuked.
Yeah, we don't need an absolute good and evil. That's a very, very Western concept, and as we saw with Avatar, this is very Eastern influenced.
It's not just that, but it's also I can't really go with the whole Western concept because, as I mentioned before, I hated the Pa wraiths as an instance. It's more of you're artificially restricting the universe that was established.
Yes,
because
that too.
Now, I don't want to dwell too much on the Pa wraiths in Deep Space Nine, but I want to bring them up to demonstrate my point. The Pa wraiths are described as this evil opposite of the prophets. The problem is, up until this point, the prophets were a vast enigma. They were, which was why they had that level of worship. But trying to reduce that to light versus dark instead of this unknowable God entity is a restriction. If something like that was established from the start, I wouldn't mind that. Like I said, I have no problem with the whole light side dark side thing in Star Wars because that was established from the get-go.
Yeah. But what I'm talking about is what we have established in Atla is that
playing both sides, I'm killing that off. He's just somebody who was willing to cooperate with Asami, but Asami has her own opinions on his eccentricities. Because we need to keep him around because he was the best. And when it comes to given that whole experiment thing with the Red Lotus, they would probably treat the whole Mercury thing as one of their alchemical experiments, trying to use Mercury to see if they can jumpstart jumpstart bending, or at the very least jumpstart the avatar state. Because if they could do that, then feasibly they could use that to figure out if they could do so with air bending.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that with all the changes we've made, she'd even end up under torture with Mercury.
Probably not. What would probably happen when it comes to when it comes to Korra in opposition to the Red Lotus is some sort of experiment on her would lead them to have the final component that they need, whatever that experiment may be.
Yeah. And that's why they'd be chasing her.
Yeah. If you want to make it cliched like the blood of the Avatar, you can go with that. I am going with the idea that the Red Lotus are mad scientists.
Yeah. Which is why they won't actually end up assassinating the Earth Queen.
No. Oh.
No, that'll just be Kuvira in the shadows of Book 3.
Yeah, it would be Kuvira doing that as a means of taking over, because obviously with her ambition, she'd be smart enough to know, just marching in with an army is not always the best idea, especially when you're dealing with someone with way more pull than you.
Which is why she would stage an assassination and make it look like the Red Lotus, sure.
Mm-hmm.
But there'd be hints there, and it'd be lamp shading for the next book. Yeah. So,
but I will say that when it comes getting back to the end of the first book, the end of this, and when you finally have Amon apprehended, that is when you can actually that is when you can actually start exploring the immediate consequences of everybody knowing that the woman who was just referred to for lack of a better term, I'll just go with her name. Her name was Ra for as far as anyone knew up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
No, her. And then, if you want to do the I am Iron Man press conference, this is the time you can do it. Just her showing up, saying Amon has been arrested. The Equalists will disperse and will be held to trial accordingly. And if somebody asks who she is to make those sort of claims, just going, my name is Korra. I'm the Avatar.
Yeah, and it's not any form of narcissism like it was with Tony Stark in this case, or with actual Korra.
Mm-hmm.
It's she has to present herself in a position of authority now to end everything.
Yeah.
And the White Lotus knows this. Tenzin knows this. Hiroshi Sato, who has now reneged on Amon because it's going to protect Asami, knows this. They all know that at this point, her keeping it a secret is not conducive. And so that final little ending to the last episode of Book 1 is, the press conference. Why are you telling us this? Why isn't it someone from the city council? And, because I'm the Avatar. My name is Korra.
Mm-hmm. And
I'm here to make sure that you're all safe.
Now, I know that there were the dumbass ship moments throughout the show, and I don't really think there's anybody in the main cast that Korra would try and pursue some kind of relationship with, especially with some of the ones that we've established, because Mako is certainly out, because the whole knowledge of her being the Avatar is going to, and his attitude about bending is going to cause some tension.
Which is why I think that with what the changes we made to Mako and Asami, it actually makes the canon Mako Asami relationship pale in comparison, because they have a foundation to build from that would actually be believable.
Yeah.
Bolin maybe there's someone he meets in a later book that would be just a brand new character we could introduce.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe he doesn't get with anybody either. Maybe Bolin and Korra are just they're the buddy cops, and it's Mako and Asami who in the B plot are the romance.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how it goes.
The point is that not everything needs to be not everything needs to be a ship.
Yeah, sail all the headcanon ships you like, but as we stated at the beginning,
Headcanons, get the headcanon.
exactly.
Now as far as the whole thing of the big reason why I stated outright that I'm nuking the whole thing with Wan and the story of the first Avatar is simply the fact that I see that story as an incarnation of a problem that I've had with bad fantasy fiction for the last decade. An overemphasis on a character's origins. Because the question of who was the first Avatar is not one that is ever asked or is relevant. As far as anyone's concerned, there's always been an Avatar for one reason or another. And the revelation of who the first is doesn't solve any problems, and it doesn't raise any problems. And it doesn't. And after it's revealed, it doesn't even matter.
Yep. It's senseless filler for senseless filler.
Yeah. Now, I could easily see some say that the thing that we've done with the lion turtle might be a little too extreme, given the idea that the lion turtle would be able to communicate with someone that far. I would argue that the entire time, the energy bending that he was able to do was because it wasn't natural. He was borrowing that ability. The only reason he was able to use it was because he had permission from that lion turtle. But without that, he doesn't have it. Just going with the whole notion of they can grant things and they can take it away if they so choose. And in his case, because of the fact that he failed the lion turtle's test, his energy bending was taken away from him. Although I'd probably have it be abstract enough where the idea that the lion turtle is rebuking him, it's never outright. I'd probably have that presented in the way that it's never outright sure whether or not the lion turtle is actually saying that, or if that's Amon rationalizing that in his own head.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's already a few eggs short of a picnic as it is. And he probably saw the lion turtle as the voice of the earth or something like that. So it wouldn't be too much out of the ordinary. But through all of this, as much as I thought we were going to be hitting the major nukes, we didn't hit the nukes as much as I thought we would. I thought we would have been hitting the nukes left and right, but no, once again we end up doing a whole lot of recontextualizing things instead of full-on nuke.
Yeah, and honestly, there's a lot of material left on the cutting room floor, I guess the best way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
That by recontextualizing and reusing, we didn't have to just go scorched earth, because in the end, we can rewrite instead of destroy and recreate.
That's why this whole thing is referred to as reconstructing.
Yep.
I could see people asking what about Lin? And to be quite honest, Um, when it comes to Lynn, I could I could just as easily see it as her just being Republic Chief of Police.
Well, and I could also see both of the Beifong sisters, Toph's daughters, knowing uh, knowing who Korra is, because again, Korra has now met Toph in an official capacity as the Avatar to hear stories. She's likely come across Toph's daughters simply in the course of them visiting their mother, because their mother hasn't gone off to become a hermit in the spirit world.
Mm-hmm.
um, so it's no longer the situation of a direct connection to the Avatar just for the sake of a direct connection to the Avatar, but also a connection via their family, and their family is more balanced. It's the only way I can put it, than it is in the base show. So Lynn would definitely actually, since she probably saw Korra from young, she might have a small sweet spot for the girl, like a favored niece.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that she's getting off with the police.
No.
That's not the same way. I may love you, Korra, but sit down, shut up, and listen to me while I tell you how things go in the law.
Yeah. As far when it comes to Tenzin, this would probably be a case where he wouldn't have a inferiority complex being in the perceived shadow of Aang.
Proud to be the son of Aang.
Yeah. I think it'd be more a case of someone who likes to have things as he believes that they're supposed to be, and doesn't adapt well to chaos. In this case, the chaos, unfortunately, is Korra.
This wasn't her fault in this case, though. Not this time around.
It wasn't her fault, but as far as he sees it, it's a case of this person is going to cause me a lot of headaches, and I need to deal with this.
Yep, and I'm already dealing with my own personal chaos and my children. So, in the end, with everything that we've established, Korra is a much more methodical character who slowly grows into the position of Avatar with the realizations of what's going around in a much different way than Aang did.
Mm-hmm.
Aang was always constantly worried he'd never live up to the responsibility, because he'd been taught the responsibility from young.
Yes, that was in fact that was the reason why what caused things to go south to begin with, is the fact that they knew that telling him about it at a young age would be taking a risk. They thought that it was a risk worth it, and it ended up backfiring because he ran off, because at his age he still wanted to act the way kids act.
Still wanted to be a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Whereas with Korra, the White Lotus was very careful in letting her know what she is, and slowly grew her to the position of knowing her responsibilities and how she would be perceived about them, while at the same time letting her grow as a child, because there's no war.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing urgent that needs the Avatar to know they're the Avatar and what their responsibilities are right now, this minute.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only reason the Air Nomads did that with Aang, was because Sozin had started the war, and Sozin had started the war and was looking to continue it, because that's back during Sozin.
Yep.
And so, whereas Aang's entire hero's journey was, how do I live up to the responsibilities given to me? Korra's hero's journey for book 1 here is, where is my place in the world? Yes, I'm told what my place is, but where is it really?
Mm-hmm.
And through interacting with Republic City, making the friends she does, knowing the people she does, having the upbringing she did, she would eventually come into the point of knowing where she is in the world as the Avatar.
Mm-hmm.
And there would be a lot of people who were insanely proud of her at the end of that. Tenzin, despite all of his, oh god, she's going to cause headaches for me, he would be ecstatic. And obviously her actual parents back at the Southern Water Tribe, when they hear what she did for Republic City, would celebrate, because the Water Tribes are actually quite known for celebration, which is funny. And Lin Beifong would come by and probably say something a little flippant, like, couldn't have done it better myself. Because that's just the Beifongs in a nutshell. They're a little flippant, a little cheeky. But all the people that she looks up to, all the people she learned from, her friends, the people she loves and cares about, would have a not unreasonable amount of high praise for her. And while she'd be embarrassed, and she may even think a little bit that she might be undeserving, just because I did only what I'm expected, why are you praising me for it? She'd still take pride in it. And it'd be a healthy sort of non-narcissistic, arrogant pride. She'd be like, yeah, I did what was needed to do, something that nobody else could do.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be actually a great, like, even though we do have hooks for the other books, and if we wanted to, we could explore upon those at a later time. It isn't necessary. That right there is a great way to close the circle, and that book is the only book you'd need. It definitely wouldn't be 12 episodes. I would make this a full season, a 26 episode season.
Mm-hmm.
Just so that we can get those bits of exploring Republic City, and those bits of Amon in the darkness, and those bits of all the little lamp shading and setup, and all the tiny Chekhov's pistols and all the giant Chekhov's cannons we need for the culmination. And in the end, you'd have this standalone story of the next Avatar, set up with hooks if necessary, if you really wanted to hook,
Mm-hmm.
but hooks that can be safely ignored. It's not sequel begging. And it's just a fantastic story. Not to toot our own horn here, but Nickelodeon, if you ever need us to rebuild Korra for real, just pay us a lot of money and we will.
Yeah, just we take no responsibility for the amount of triggering that's going to happen in your writing staff, because I guarantee that we would end up having situations not too far removed from the whole not a discussion scene in Moneyball.
Yep.
It's like, but it'd be so progressive. This is not a discussion. What are we discussing? And the point when it comes to these reconstructions is not necessarily to toot our horn and how we're better writers, but more, although that's certainly the case, but more to show how easy it is that just with a few tweaks, you can take trash and turn it into treasure. That's the ultimate message that when it comes to these reconstructions. Plus building things in this regard is always fun.
Yep. As people who like to play tabletop and people who like to write, creators essentially,
Mm-hmm.
This act of taking a creation we saw fail terribly and doing something with it to make it rise above has its own sense of exhilaration.
Yep. But I think that'll be a strong enough coda to leave off of for this particular episode of GeekWatch. Now, let's see what we've, and next week that's where you're going to have your spotlight next week, Zan. But I do have a couple things earmarked for this week as far as interviews. In fact, I've got two of them. Wednesday, Jim Pinto will be coming back to talk about his latest project. Thursday, if I'm able to get it done, the Warden, who I have covered a previous entry from his work a long time ago, will be coming in, and of course. Friday will be the return of Valley of the Judge, where we get to talk about the mystery of the Druids. I have had that whole mystery of the Druids songs and ending themes stuck in my head for the last week.
Good job.
But that is going to do it for this particular edition of GeekWatch. Of course, I do want to sincerely thank everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come on and enjoy the madness. And there'll be plenty more, as there always is, here on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra, I am your gaming monk, and